that Ventures? The Ventures?
Oh no, Waylon James.
Oh my God.
Are we live?
We
All right.
are live.
Well, welcome everybody. Episode 4, Martinis with Scott. Ashley, what are we making today? A Tito's Martini?
We are having a classic vodka martini made with Tito's vodka.
Excellent. Excellent. The technology challenges are going really well. We have audio. We're now on live on Periscope. The podcast is on iTunes. We have a channel on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Google Play, Facebook, Instagram, and we're starting to get some martinis. We're starting to get some followers, and it's been great. As usual, Martinis with Scott brought to you by Sinclair Range, and we're here today at the 20 Bay Street office, beautiful downtown Toronto. Hopefully you're looking up Bay Street. And Sinclair Range, check us out at sinclairrange.com. We are a international consulting firm, management consulting, and the brand is particularly known for turnarounds and high growth, assisting management teams with that and the related investment banking. So any troubles you have, look us up. And we're here today with my good friend, Chris Mathers. Welcome.
Thank you.
And cheers if you have a drink. People listening in, enjoy yourself.
Very nice.
Chris is a professional public speaker. He is the author of best-selling book, Crime School, Money Laundering. What year was this book? 2004.
Yeah. There's an update though now on electronic update online.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I don't have that?
I'll send it to you. PDF if you like.
I have this one inscribed, which I quite like, and it says, as it turns out, crime does pay. So I enjoyed that. And there's one thing I wanted to read to you because I thought it was great. From the foreword, which was written by Norm Inkster, who was the former head of Interpol. Is that correct? For 4 years, 5 years?
4 years.
4 years. First sentence. Chris Matthews was an outstanding undercover police officer. I like that. Norm's a serious guy.
He is a serious man.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Chris spent most of his life working undercover with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the DEA in the U.S. and U.S. Customs Service, which you're telling me was a predecessor to ICE. Is that accurate? He's posed as a gangster, a drug trafficker, a money launderer. In 1995, he joined KPMG. Is it 95 or late 94?
95, which is where we met, actually.
Well, actually, I left October, November 1994. So I
still hanging
probably
around, though, I
saw.
remember.
Yeah, it was hard to. They kept some personal things of mine. I had to get them. Where he was appointed president of KPMG Corporate Intelligence, doing international due diligence, asset recovery operations, investigations, prevention of organized crime and money laundering. Chris works in security, hiring decisions, background checks, money laundering schemes, corporate fraud, bribery. You get the idea. This is all on his website, which you can look at, Chris Mathers Inc.
ChrisMathers.com.
ChrisMathers.com. Okay. Chris does a lot of media, served as a consultant on several feature films and documentaries related to organized crime, espionage, money laundering. He's appeared on television and radio interviews on CNN, PBS, MSNBC. You only do the left-leaning ones? Is that the...
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All of the Canadian national news networks and media outlets in Asia, Africa, Europe, Australia, and the Caribbean. And Chris's company, Chris Mathers Inc., right? Which Chris obviously founded and is president of, works in foreign and domestic due diligence, cybersecurity, workplace harassment investigations, anti-AML. AML what?
Anything law enforcement related, anything security related.
That's anti-money laundering, by the way. Investigation of complex financial crimes, physical security for the mining industry. I didn't put that in my notes, but we did a mining Periscope episode 2.
Oh, really?
And with Richardson,
Mm-hmm.
remember Jan?
Yeah.
And Rick Williams from Blackwell Investment Services. And, they're doing junior mining deals in strange countries. And I always, you never hear about these junior mining guys getting security or doing any background checks. You always wonder what they ought to be doing there.
It's pretty edgy.
Yeah.
In the mining business.
Yeah. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Anything else to add in your career? All right. So we got a couple of topics we wanted to tackle today. So let's jump right in on cybersecurity.
That's the big one right now. It's huge.
So here's my hypothesis, is that every large company that has the resources and a bunch of smart people sitting around thinking about these things is starting to deal with or has already dealt with cybersecurity and has a plan. Maybe they bring in a consultant like you. My business, our market, which is more mid-market, a little smaller, owner-managers. I brought you out to see one of my clients this morning. We have 200 employees there in manufacturing. They do a great job. Not one of my clients has ever mentioned the word cybersecurity to me. I was working on a company in Red Deer in Alberta in the oil patch area. Our insurance broker at Hub brought us the idea of cyber insurance. I think it literally costs $500. I have no idea what it covers. It just seemed like a good idea, but we're not thinking about it. Mid-market and smaller businesses, that's my theory, is we're just not thinking about it.
I think you're right. I think it's the biggest threat to business in the Western world right now. Absolutely the biggest. And the problem is that the threats come from so many different places. You have state actors, you have criminal groups, you've got activists, the WikiLeaks type of people, etc. And all of these organizations are actively involved in stealing data, stealing assets, subverting the politics of another country. You saw with the U.S. election and how the Russians had set up Facebook pages and stuff to foment problems within the electoral system. It's the future. Everything is cyber. I don't think we do a case these days that's not got some cyber aspect to it. If you think about it this way, if you're investigating frauds, for example, before the advent of all this technology, you're trying to prove a fraud, you got to prove intent. Fraud is dishonest deprivation with an element of deceit, but you have to prove intent that the guy intended to commit the fraud. He's not just a bad businessman. Well, we never had a crime scene before.
Right.
But now with computers, you have a crime scene.
Okay.
And also proving intent. I mean, how do you prove intent? Now guys send messages to each other that clearly states their intent. If you're able to grab them. So it makes it, I'm not going to say it makes it easier, it certainly makes it more interesting. But the mid-market companies, 200 million and less, which is what Sinclair Range focuses on, I think are the ones that they aren't paying attention. The very large corporations, like the Canadian banks, for example, they have legions of guys, that are working tirelessly because they want to preserve the banking system. If we lose faith in them, we're done. But the mid-market companies, security, the level of security always goes up after an incident. So they get hit, and then they spend big dough to try and.
So what does they get hit mean?
Well, there's a number of things happening.
Never having had a client that got hit.
We're touching wood. The two big ones right now would be ransomware and business email compromise. And I think everybody knows what ransomware is. It's basically extortion. It's 21st century extortion. The bad guys cause someone in your company to download a bug into your IT architecture. They freeze up and lock up your information, and you have to pay them money to get the key to break the encryption. Pretty simple. And I mean, my doctor got hit. He's
Really?
one guy in an office with a secretary, and he got hit. Cost him $3,000. He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Pay them. What else can you do?"
Yeah.
He had no backups.
Wow.
So, and now that, I don't want to scare people too much, but now what's happening is some of these of the software, malware that goes into your system, some of it lays dormant for any particular length of time. And so you may be backing that up as well.
Right.
So then you have a bigger problem when it finally hits.
Does the cloud fix that?
Not
So I mean,
really.
everything that we do, it's on.
You back it up to the cloud. My point is, if you
Well, it goes
back-
to the cloud, but it's also on Ashley's phone.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that she doesn't, like, it's everywhere.
Well, yeah, and
All
you
over.
want to have what we do at my office is every couple of days we roll out a big hard drive, plug it in, we download everything, we stick it in the safe.
Including the dormant malware.
Yeah, including the dormant malware if it's in there, and that's the problem. Now,
Huh.
there's ways of looking for it, and I have a bevy of propeller heads that can figure this stuff out, and
Yeah.
they live for that.
Huh.
Most of them have never even.
So what
missed
is
a girl,
what
actually.
does an owner, manager, entrepreneur do? Like, what's a decent protocol?
So here's the problem. Most of these places have outsourced their IT. They don't have in-house people. They hire some
Yes.
service provider.
Yeah.
And the service provider is like a general practitioner.
Well, he's a website guy.
Yeah, well, like for a
Who
doctor.
has to do more things.
Yeah, he's just like a doctor.
Yeah.
He doesn't know a lot of specific stuff. He just handles it for you. Our people are evidence gatherers. Our people are security guys. That's all they do. And you need to do a bunch of different things. Training is very important for your people. You need to train them to detect phishing attacks, which is people sending a spoofed email to make you think that it's something that it isn't. You click on the attachment, you download the bug into your system, and then you're done. I mean, you can teach people to identify emails that are suspicious, but everybody's busy. That's the problem. You get 150 emails a day, and you're trying to click through them, and we're not all. I don't know about you, but I only have episodes of brilliance, and they don't come very often. And sometimes people are just lazy or dumb or tired or whatever, and they make a mistake.
Yeah.
And
That's
what
why
these
I
guys
don't
are
open my
doing.
emails
Ever.
ever. If anybody's wondering why I didn't reply.
It's a huge problem. That's the ransomware side. The other side is this business email compromise. So the interesting thing is that I speak at a lot of conferences, and you go on the website for the conference, and it'll say Scott Sinclair is going to be out here in Vancouver speaking on Wednesday. So anybody who's trying to gather intelligence on you knows that you're in Vancouver on Wednesday. So we know he's speaking at noon. He's probably going to be leaving that day, coming back home or going somewhere. So if we're able to subvert your system, either hack into your email or pretend to be you, the bad guy will contact someone in your organization who's in charge of signing checks or writing checks, a controller, a person in the
Yeah.
payables department. And it'll be supposedly from you when you say to the person in the payables, it's Scott, listen, I got this deal cooking and it's really sensitive and it's really time sensitive. I'm getting on a plane right now. So as soon as I get off the plane, I'll call you. But you need to wire transfer $1 million to this particular bank account. If you don't do it in the next couple hours,
we're screwed.
Yeah,
The
we're
deal
gonna be in
falls
trouble.
apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it's very sensitive. You can't tell anyone, and you're the only one I can trust with this.
I've had this happen
Oh, yeah.
multiple
Oh, yeah.
times.
Yeah.
But they don't
Very common.
hack the account.
Not
They
always.
clone
No.
it,
Yeah.
which I had never heard of. I assume it's if a techie is watching. I think that's old news.
Yeah, but there's other
But it
ways
was
of
a
doing
surprise to me. So
Yeah.
it comes up with my email address.
What appears to be your email address.
Correct.
Yeah. And so your assistant, your payables person says, "Oh my gosh, the boss wants me to do this," and they send the money.
Yes.
When you get off the plane, if you do get off
Yep.
the plane, that's what happens. Now it started like that, but these crimes all morph. They evolve, and the bad guys are very astute. the guys that do the work for me are mostly ex-military guys and some younger hacker guys. They're really good, best of the best. But they're not alone. There's plenty of bad guys out there with the same qualifications or better.
Yeah.
Lots of ex-military in Eastern Europe who are into this business. So what they've done as sort of an evolution of this business email compromise, they don't pretend to be you anymore because that's problematic. So what they'll do, and what they did to McEwen University out in Alberta, they'll identify either using a confederate inside the organization or just through good intel that you owe money to the ABC construction company. In McEwen's case, it was like $11.3 million. They contact the person who's in charge of sending out the checks and say, listen, we've got a problem with our bank. We're in a dispute with our bank. Everybody can relate.
Don't send the money there.
Don't send it there, yeah, because we're upset with them.
Yeah.
We have a new bank account. So when you pay us, send it there.
Yeah.
And that seems rather innocuous. It seems a normal course of business, and somebody presses the button. So the way to get around these things is never take any instruction by email when it comes to things like that. And also have a threshold that people can't get past. And, you know, if we're going to send a wire for more than $5,000, we need 2 signatures on it. We need 2 sets of eyes to make sure that it's legit. But how do you train the people? So what we do with these phishing tests, for example. Now, recently we were hired by a law firm, and so what we do is we do a phishing test, and we have software that tells us how many people looked at the email, how many opened it, how many clicked on the link, and we report back to the client. Okay, this is the percentage. 60% of the people.
So an actual test. So you took a law firm up here. Well, whoever hired you up here.
Yeah.
And they've got 100 lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And you send them an actual. This is what a fraud would look like. So you send it to the lawyers and see what happens.
Yeah.
And what happens is 60% of them open it.
Yeah, and of them, maybe 50% click on the link. So then,
wow.
And we don't use porn or anything. We use like really basic stuff, you know. And sometimes we'll use
Stats go up with porn. Is that?
Oh, way up, yeah. But we also sometimes use contextual stuff, and I'll explain that. So we do the phishing test, and then we say, okay, this is how many of your people did that. So they obviously need training.
Yeah.
So we give them the training course, and then we do it again. And then hopefully the numbers go down. And so for the one client that we did, the numbers went down, and so then we wanted to do the final one. And what we did is we spoofed an email from the managing partner. And the email said, as you know, we had a company come in here, in this case it was Chris Mendes Inc., and they conducted a phishing test, and we did training. And in spite of that, and then they did a second test, and in spite of all the training we gave you morons, people still clicked. And I'm so upset, I've attached a list of all the people in the firm who were so stupid that they clicked on the link. We got like a 90% click rate on that one. Everybody wanted to see who in the firm was stupid. So the managing partner said, well, that's really not fair, is it? I said, well, perhaps not, but that's the way it works.
And the bad guys,
in the world of bad guys
act fairly.
They don't act fairly, so. But everybody can get hit. I probably get 2 or 3 a week sent to me from various people. They're just trying to get everyone.
Yeah.
And the way around it too. I mean, password control is another big issue, a huge issue.
So simple.
Oh, and so many people have such easy passwords to crack. The software you use to crack passwords is called brute force software, and it's exactly what it is. It just keeps hammering different combinations. Now you can do up to, I think it's 3 billion password combinations per second.
What?
Yeah, that's what this stuff can do.
Jeez.
It's huge. So here's the thing: if you use a word, like a word or a name, something in any language,
like cigar 100 exclamation point.
I'll crack that in a heartbeat. That's the
really
use a dictionary
just through brute force. You don't really know anything about me.
No dictionary program.
Really?
First of all, so what you have to do is you have to make your password complex. But the problem is, how many passwords do you have?
Lots.
Oh shit! Everybody's got one.
So I bought an app. I didn't buy it. I downloaded an app, and it generates random passwords and it keeps them in a secure location. So I don't have to remember. I can cut and paste. But of course, the app, the password for the app itself is.
Okay, so here's what you're
my name.
Okay, so here's how you're going to do this differently. Okay, Now, if I asked you to remember 16 letters or numbers, 16,
Not a chance in hell.
you're going to forget them. And the
Unless
reason
they were in sequential order, like A, B, C.
yeah, but then won't be.
Yeah,
We're going to
okay.
crack that. And the problem today is that we have downloaded our brains into these machines.
100%. You can't remember a 7-digit phone number.
Remember, in a day, you could remember
Yep.
50 phone numbers.
Yep.
So the piece of your brain that was being used for
Gone.
that is either laying empty or hopefully been filled up with something else, but I don't know. So how do you teach someone to remember a password that's 16 digits long? Well, I'm going to tell you. So let's say, and this is Elizabethan cryptography. I mean, this is old school stuff. So let's say that you want to create a new password. There's a couple of ways you can do it to remember a lengthy password. Let's say a nursery rhyme. Mary had a little lamb, okay? So M-H-A-L-L is please was as all those letters. Now you can remember that. That's burned into your
Sure.
memory. You know?
Yeah.
You'll be dying, you'll be able to say that nursery rhyme. So you'll have a popular song, a poem, the Gettysburg Address, whatever that may be. Take the first letter of each of those things. They're completely random. Throw in a couple of numbers, throw in a couple of symbols. You can remember that easily.
Absolutely. Even I.
That's how you do it. And
Okay.
you know, and you have to convince people to change their passwords regularly and to not use real words.
Why am I changing them regularly?
Change them regularly because you use them a lot. You know, people are lazy, and there's credentials for sale. My guys surf the dark web, and there's these marketplaces on the dark web where bad guys trade credentials. They trade personal information. So what'll happen is, let's say you go on, and this happened with LinkedIn. LinkedIn got hit pretty hard in 2016.
Yes.
And the reason that it was so successful is that people went on LinkedIn and it asks you to sign in, you need an email address. So they use their office email address.
Yep.
It asks you for a password. A lot of people said, oh no, they just use the same password as they use for everything else.
Yep.
So they hack that, they get your credentials, they get your email, and they get your password.
Right.
And then they try and get into your system using those credentials. So we have a service where we monitor the dark web for our clients, and I'm going to charge them like $300 a month or something, but and whenever any of the credentials from their firm come up for sale, we tell them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But they come up a lot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, think about it. There's guys out there, they're full-time job.
This is what they do.
Yeah, they sit in their underwear in front of a computer, 5,000 miles away from here and try and get people.
This is the Trump 400-pound guy in the bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's going on. And it's a real threat. So if you say, okay, we've got state-sponsored people. The big ones are North Korea, Russia, China, Iran. Okay, those are the four bad guys out there that are trying to subvert whatever they can, whether it's subverting our elections or stealing money or Central Bank of Bangladesh, for example. They had a compromise of their SWIFT system for sending wires.
They did?
Yeah, and some guys ripped $81 million out of them.
But when you're into SWIFT, aren't you into everybody else's system as well?
Well, the way it's set up is each way I understand it, each central bank is responsible for their own SWIFT integrity.
Okay.
But these guys had a confederate inside the bank. But that money bounced from Bangladesh to, I think, to the Philippines, and then to Macau, and then it was out through some casinos. They've got a couple of people in custody, but they're pretty sure that it was North Korea behind that. And then for the most basic...
But complicit with the Chinese.
Well, yeah, they're probably
flowing
working
through
out
them.
of China, probably.
Yeah.
But the problem is that for the basest of reasons, they just wanted the dough.
Yeah.
They just need the hard currency, and that's how they the old-fashioned way, they steal it.
Wow.
So, okay, so then you have the state guys, state-sponsored guys, and then you have organized crime. Well, in a lot of these countries, the line between organized crime and the intelligence service is pretty blurry, if it even exists.
Yeah.
And so, they just take the people that they need and to do the work for them. And then on top of that, lay over that, you've got all the hacktivists, as they call it, who don't like this or don't like that, and they do these. Sometimes they do some innocuous stuff like what do they call it, DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack, where they just jam up your website so nobody can get at it.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, and sometimes they're just doing it. It's for some people, it's the modern day version of breaking your neighbor's window. It's,
Yeah.
They're just.
We had people hack, actually more than once, maybe 3, 4, 5 times over the last, say, 5 years. People hack some site that we owned, and then they put some link on it that generates money for them.
Yeah.
Like clickbait, so
Yeah.
it could be porn, it was like whatever, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was largely porn.
Yeah.
But something that, and our people told us the intent of that is somebody would click through that, and they make money on that in some way.
Well, and competitors too. If you've got $50,000 worth of Google ads, the more people click, the more you're paying. Right?
Yeah.
Well, your competitors may come on and use bots to just click them constantly.
To make you pay more.
Yeah, or to burn off your credit. So,
Bastards.
well, yeah, it's an integrity issue, obviously. But just because a company is under 200 million or under 2 million, they shouldn't be thinking that they're not a potential victim. So the trick is this. The old adage where, if two guys are being chased by a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you have to be faster than the other guy. It's the same thing. So all you have to do is, there's so many potential victims, and if you make your architecture just a little bit harder than everybody else, I mean, they'll try.
Yeah.
But
there's more low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, so
somewhere else.
if you can't crack it very
So
quickly.
give me the 1, 2, 3 things that a business owner, entrepreneur ought to be doing on this front.
Okay.
Like the fellow listens to this, wakes up in the morning and says, okay,
All right.
Chris said do these 2 things.
It's more than 1 or 3, but I'll try and go through as many as I can. For those of you out there that are using bootleg software, Microsoft Office or what have you, you're the #1 target because you don't have any patches. If you buy the software and you have a license, Microsoft or Apple will send you patches, security updates, because they're constantly looking for stuff. And they pay people to find holes in their software so they can patch it. If you got a bootleg piece of software, you don't get any patches. In the UK, for example...
Or if you're an Apple user and you think it's going to shut down your system for 3 days, so
Well,
you don't download it.
Yeah, or it's going to slow your machine
You're
down.
saying download it.
Yeah, I'm saying download it.
Okay.
Download it and go to bed or do whatever. But the National Health Service in the UK, they got hit. Now, they weren't using bootleg software, but what was happening is they weren't keeping up with their security patches. They had open ports, and the people were able to get into their system through the open ports. So it's a big war, and it doesn't look like it's going to end very soon because it's a source of great profit for these guys, huge profit.
Okay.
So that's the first one. Password changes. You have to.
And we discussed why on that. So password changes.
Yeah. So here's the thing too. In ancient times, if you pissed off the king, he cut your head off, put it on a stick, stuck it in front of the castle, and people would go by and they'd say, "What did he do?" And people would say, "Whatever the guy did." And they say, "Well, I'm sure not going to do that." So what you need to do is the 21st century equivalent. If someone in your organization does something really stupid and exposes the organization to, destruction, you got to fire them and tell everybody why you fired them.
Yes.
Not quiet, give them a check, send them out the door. Gas them and let everybody know this guy messed up. And we're not going to take that. That's a very important thing. And you need to hire people to do phishing tests. You've got or penetration tests, we call them, and you need to do these things. Now,
And for every one of my clients, a phishing penetration test is going to highlight a lot.
Yes, it is.
And on the lot that it highlights, is there going to be do these 2 simple things, and that's 80% of the problem? Probably, right?
Well, the big problem is the human problem, is human frailty. Most of the viewers probably have received these UPS and FedEx, fake UPS, FedEx emails saying, you got to click on this and you'll be able to find out about your package. Well, let's say you're an admin assistant at Christmas time, and you get a UPS thing, and you think that it's your boss's ordered a present for his wife, you might click on that. The other thing that's really popular, these e-cards.
Don't know the e-cards one.
Yeah, well, people send e-cards now. They don't send paper cards. So around Valentine's Day and Christmas, lots of fake e-cards go out. People say, oh, somebody sent me an e-card, and they click on it. And it takes them down the rabbit hole. And they end up...
Hey, I assume that every one of these scams works. Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard about it.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah. Well,
So, for example, my cell phone is a US phone. It's not a Canadian phone.
Yeah.
So I get, I want to say 18 phone calls a week about my student loans and my car insurance. And I think, how stupid are these people? But they're not that stupid. I mean, they wouldn't be doing that if it didn't work.
Well, no.
There's a cost benefit to that from their perspective.
As my old man used to say, it's not what you throw, it's what sticks. So think of the Nigerians, and who has never gotten an email? In the old days, it was letters. These Nigerian letters, a 4 and 9 for us. From the guy, the prince who has all the money.
Yeah, the Ivory Coast prince guy. Yeah.
So I mean, I had an office in Nigeria for about 4 or 5 years, and I really got to see the enforcement action that they take against these 419 guys, which is pretty brutal, actually. But over there's internet cafes, and guys are just lined up to get in.
Really?
Oh yeah. This one place that I know of, in Lagos, they line up. You see them on the street, all lined up, all scammers, these guys. And then the guy inside, Master P, I think was his name, he lets you in for 55 minutes, and at 5 minutes to the hour, he blows a whistle, and you have to stop doing your scams online, and on the hour, he just turns off the internet. Then those guys leave, and the next crew of guys goes in and run their scams. They're doing what we call hugger muggers, like romance scams, very, very popular, particularly online.
Hugger muggers.
Yes, he hugs you and rips you off.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of lonely people in the world, and
So I had a partner, just a little anecdote before we move on. I had a partner that was Richardson back in the day. So he had one of these Nigerian things, and so he engaged the guy. I had one partner that thought this was going to solve all of his problems because he would believe anything. And then we had Richardson, and he would say, he engaged the guy by email. And he said, this is the best thing I've ever heard of. I don't want to cut my partners in, so I'm going to open a new account. If you could just send me $5,000 to open up a new bank account. This went on for weeks. This guy was engaging it. He never got the money.
No. But if you think about it, these guys they're not fools. So what they'll do is they'll check into a hotel that's got like a huge internet pipe, and they'll just move their server in, and they'll whack out 1 million emails in one night all over the world, and then just see what comes back.
Crazy.
So even if you get 0.1% response, and it's essentially an advanced fee scheme. The way it works, if you pursue it, and every year in Canada and the United States, people fall victim to this.
Yeah.
Legitimate people too. I get calls from attorneys who say, "I have a client who's doing this thing." So, they're doing it because they're making money from it.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
And you're right, legitimate people fall for it. Do you remember in the 90s, the roll programs? It was unexplainable.
Yeah.
And serious people, smart people, would fall for it all the time.
When you're in the fraud business, like we are, every single day of the week, we deal with these kinds of things. With people calling with some guy is a Satanist and he's going to do something for you and only wants $1 million, and people give it to him. And these are like legitimate people who do such foolish things. Then they come to us and say, I lost my money, can you get it back? Well, the one thing I've learned over the years is people don't steal your money to save it.
Right.
It's
not going to RESP.
Well, it's the one we talked about at one time at the turnaround management thing. This guy who he borrowed 60 some odd million from our client, big European bank basically, to do a tourist development in the Caribbean, to build a hotel and casino and all that. And essentially what he did is he took the $60 million and then he hired a bulldozer to push the dirt around for a while. And he just lived on the $60 million. He spent $1 million in 1 year on airfare.
Yeah.
He would fly that Emirates flight, where you get a hotel room and
Yeah.
concierge and all that.
Shower.
He donated $100,000 to an elephant polo team. Not sure if you're familiar with elephant polo, but
I am familiar with it.
yeah,
I've
big
not
ball
donated
elephants. No.
personally. Yeah.
But when you're stealing people's money, so we recovered. Again, we seized the property back, and seized a bunch of other stuff. We recovered a bunch of dough from them. I think they got about $40 million back. But when they sent us the mandate to start looking at this guy, the first thing that our people did is they just do a workup on the guy, see who he is, and basic things, like his credit bureau and that kind of stuff in the U.S. And the guy owed money all over town. He hadn't paid his dentist, the fence around his pool, he hadn't paid that guy, and these guys lent him $60 million.
Yeah.
And I said to the managing director, this German dude, I said, when your boss is back in the fatherland there, when they see our report, you're going to get canned.
This is a good lead-in to the next segment here, which is due diligence.
Oh yeah.
So we worked on Sequest for a little while, right? So this is a guy who literally got out of jail for securities fraud. I think it was hard to go to jail in the 1990s in Canada for securities fraud.
Almost impossible. Hard to go to jail for murder in Canada.
Right? So he went to jail for securities. He gets out. He raises $60-odd million, same number, out of jail for a high-yield debt fund.
High yield. You hear the words high yield, run.
That's not true to all my client base. For a high-yield debt fund, and I'm not going to say 100%, but pretty much all of the investments were related party. Right? So you want to borrow 500,000 out of that, $1 million out of that. So he's got a separate deal with you. Plus he's got the commissions over here. It's all related party, and it all fell apart. He went bankrupt, and I heard he's going back to jail. I don't know if that's true, but the fact is, how do you come out of jail for securities fraud on a financial fraud and come out and raise $60 million?
Actually, it's very simple. It's very simple.
That's my point.
Okay, here's why. Because honest people think, oh, yeah, we need a refill.
We need a refill.
Honest people think that everyone is honest.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. People.
If you're a paranoid person, then you're paranoid about everybody. And
if you're a crook, everybody's a crook, or you think everybody's a crook. But and the other thing too is that if you go up Bay Street here, like when I left the cops and I came to the business world, I figured I'd be meeting the captains of industry, guys that really had their act together. And I did meet a lot of guys like that. But a lot of times I saw people falling victims to fraud schemes that my mom would have been able to identify.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out why these fairly astute individuals were falling victims to fraud. And then Jim Hunter from KPMG told me this, and I never forgot it. He said, all these guys are very entrepreneurial. So whereas you or I would say, oh, that's a scam, they get an idea, and then right away they're starting to work on it in their head. Oh, well, move it around, do this.
And they start rationalizing things.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of confirmation bias.
Yes.
Right? And you're changing facts to fit what you think.
And deal fever.
Yeah.
Which is what I've seen. They said they get into the deal, and they're gonna close that deal. They say, guys, it's not gonna close. You go, no, we're gonna close for sure. And they just, it's an ego thing. And up this street, or up Wall Street, it's very much ego-driven. And that's not lost on people who prey on the weaknesses of others.
I love that sound. Okay, tell me about foreign domestic due diligence. So this is a service provided by firms like yours.
Yeah.
That if you're a layperson, it's basically a background check to the counterparty.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to hire somebody, I'm going to borrow money from somebody, I'm going to lend money to somebody, I'm going to set up a foreign sub, and I need a
foreign
trustee,
agents,
right? I need someone holding my bearer shares. This is a counterparty due diligence check.
Yes,
is that correct?
In most cases, although we do a variety of things, but most of the time I'm either giving him money or he's giving me money, and we want to make sure that it's not
or associating yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and so this is you do criminal checks.
Yeah.
What else do you do?
Well, again, it depends on a lot of things. The first thing
Thank
I would, thank you, Ashley.
No
The
problem.
first thing I would say to people who are thinking about doing business with someone, just Google the guy. Just do that to start with.
As my good friend, you would be embarrassed how rarely I do that.
Well, maybe you should start doing it because,
Why don't I? Like, you just don't think about it.
Yeah, you check the guy out, and right away it comes up. Securities fraud. So you don't have to hire us. And the other problem that I find is I'll have someone like yourself call me and say, hey, can you do a check on Joe Blow? And I know Joe Blow, and I know he's a gangster. So I can't really say to you, okay, Scott, well, listen, give me $10,000 and we'll look into it. I already know he's a gangster, so I have to cut my own throat and say, well, save your money, just forget it, the guy's a bum. Quite often they'll say, well, give me a report anyway. But past the Google thing, and what some guys do is if they took a pinch, they'll do a lot of other things to push them down on the Google results.
Right.
They'll go to a fun run, or they'll give money to charity, just to keep it down to page 2.
Fun run.
Well, they'll do anything that gets on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so most people only look at the first page, maybe the second.
Yeah.
They don't go farther.
100%. Yeah.
And searching the internet it's not as a simple task as you may think. And so what we do is we use it like a state-sponsored intelligence service would do. We use the internet as a database. And we have a lot of other proprietary databases and ones that we subscribe to. And a lot of what we do, you could do if you knew where to look and bought a subscription to all this stuff. And so we use that as the framework, like an intelligence agency would, and then we build our human source component on top of that. So if you say to me, Chris, I want you to check a guy out who works for Shell Oil in Nigeria. We'll check him out, find out who he is, and then we'll say, who do we know at Shell in Nigeria? Oh, we know so-and-so. Call him. And we call him up. And I'm used to saying in the Mounties, a good source is worth 1,000 wiretaps. You get a good source, he tell you everything.
Yeah.
And we have people, for the domestic stuff, in Canada it's very difficult to do. Because Canada, we have this privacy legislation. And if there's anyone out there that has benefited, who's not a criminal, who has benefited from the privacy legislation, I'd like to hear from them because I haven't met anyone yet who has. Because, for example, in this country, criminal trials or criminal cases, our courts are open. We're a democracy. Anybody can go, and if I get charged with offense, you can go and sit and watch and see what happens. That's one of the mainstays of democracy. And criminal convictions are public record, except the repository for that public record is in the RCMP CPIC system, which is private. So you can't get at it. So if I meet you and want to do a business deal, I can't tell if you're a criminal. I can't check somewhere to see if you have a conviction for fraud. Unless we're going to do business, and then out comes what we say, the personal information form, personal history form.
Yeah.
So I say, Scott, here's a personal history form. Sign it. This
So that's
allows-
why people sign it?
Yeah, because I have a memorandum of understanding with the RCMP,
Yeah.
and I'm allowed to access the CPIC system if you give your consent.
Oh.
So you sign off, I'll go to the Mounties and say, hey, Scott got a conviction? They'll say yes, no, or what, I don't know. So that's...
So every time I've been given one of these forms and I ask the people, why do I need to sign that?
Mhm.
And they say, it's just the way we do business. It's not immoral to research you on our own without this form. That's just kind of bullshit. It actually gives them access to databases that they otherwise couldn't have gotten.
Yeah, it does. I mean, our form, you disclaim everything. We can, go and talk to your mom. I mean, we put everything on there. But, that's the start.
Yeah.
And then we have to verify the information. We do a lot of board appointments, corner office things like that. And I would say that we run about, for every 15 background due diligence things that we do, about 1 in 15 comes up with something that's of interest to the. We did one for a bank. Guy was going to be on the board of the bank. One of these banks here. Won't say which one.
Yeah.
Anyway, so poor guy, he's like a very straight business guy, MBA, and this is some years ago. And one of my kids comes in and says, take a look at this. And here's the guy on Facebook or whatever it was in Jamaica on holidays, smoking a doober the size of a cucumber and, doing some kind of thing into the camera. And, so we produced
before legalization.
Yeah, well, we could do a whole show about that. But anyway, so you have to report to the client that, it is the individual and his actions in the photograph are consistent with the use of illegal substances and pass that along.
Make your own judgment.
Yes, I mean that's the number one rule. We do not make decisions for our clients.
You're just facts.
We just provide the information.
Yeah.
And they have to make, because a lot of times I get the call and it's it's the board. They're all in the room and I'm on the phone and they're saying, well, what do we do now? So, well, I'm completely unqualified to make your business decisions. I'm telling you that this is a bad guy. But what else?
I'm telling you this guy's smoking in Jamaica.
Yeah. Or this guy's a fraudster, or this guy, we get all like murders, all sorts of things. But if the guy's been involved in something quite nefarious, and I find out that we told you that and you hired him anyway, we're not going to be working for you again. That's the end of that. But, so I say 1 in 15. We've been doing for law firms, we're doing a lot of background work on directors of marijuana companies. And it's about 1 in 5.
But the directors don't they go through a Health Canada security review?
Well, eventually.
No, I think they go through up front.
Oh, no. The ones that we get, these are guys trying to put a deal together. So they haven't even gotten their Health Canada.
They haven't got their license.
Nothing.
This is pre-license.
Yeah. So
I assume that the Health Canada security review is pretty good.
Oh yeah, some of the mounties. It's very
good.
Good.
Right. So they're going to find the same thing you're going to find. So you would be a pre-check.
Yeah. Well, they're going to find what we find if it's a criminal conviction.
Yeah.
They may not find what we find if it's reputational.
Okay.
Because they don't do that kind of inquiry. All they do is criminal. And it's not, there's a lot of people out there doing bad things that have never taken a pinch.
I don't want to say that this is disturbing to me, but I have found that this whole process with Health Canada to be really formulaic.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of I know a guy stuff going on
in
this industry.
I wrote in my book 15 years ago that the Canadian government are the only people that could sell drugs and lose money at it. And they are. They're losing a fortune. It's, you get guys who put on their CV, I have 25 years experience cultivating and distributing marijuana. Well, that means you were a criminal for the past 23 years. Now, whether or not you believe that marijuana is right or wrong, at the time it was illegal and you were violating the law.
Yeah.
So, in the marijuana business, it's kind of like the Wild West. There's a lot of guys that we say, you know what, here's some information on him. You probably don't want him on your board, but you make the decision. We don't care. We ultimately, it doesn't matter.
Are you working in that industry?
I have nothing to do with it.
You should be.
No, listen. If a law firm comes to us and asks us to vet people, we'll vet them. But we don't. No, I'm not doing any work for those guys.
If a partner up this street at any law firm hangs up a shingle and says, I'm an expert in this industry, which, by the way, it takes you roughly 3 weeks to be an expert in this industry, they're the highest earning partner for the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the money's insane.
You make a decision early on in life.
Yeah.
Okay, which way you're going to go. I was an RCP officer. I believe that drugs are a bad thing, notwithstanding the decisions of our government. If people want to smoke marijuana, see, to me, it's just a commodity. It's an organized crime commodity. Whether it's marijuana
for sure.
Heroin, it doesn't matter. It's an illegal commodity people are moving.
Yeah.
And if you'd have asked the Canadian government, we want you to legalize pot, but we want you to screw it up. They couldn't have screwed it up as much as they've screwed it up already.
I was having a drink, actually, am I allowed to say this? I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I was having a drink with one of our Canadian federal leaders of a political party who voted against legalization, not because he was against legalization, but because he thought it was overregulated.
Well, it is.
And he's right. In retrospect, I think he's exactly right.
Yeah, look, if people want to get high, we're drinking. If people want to smoke marijuana, do it. I don't deal in those things. I deal in morality, integrity, like what kind of a person are
This
you?
is but this is a real industry with billions of dollars.
Sure
right?
it is. Sure
Billions.
It is. Yeah.
Billions of dollars of market cap.
It's
going
sin.
into this.
Everybody wants it's
And
like booze.
it needs to be legit.
Yeah, and so
Right.
the role that we would, and this is very an ancillary role. The role we play in the marijuana industry is that if a law firm who is putting a deal together comes to us with the players, we will vet the players and tell them,
But
what
every
they're
one of
good or
these
bad.
guys, so you look at Aurora, Free, Canopy, whoever, all these people, they more or less all use the same security guy to design the security system, which is, I forget what they call it, but the security system within the greenhouse.
Which is a bunch of baloney anyway. Because
Exactly my point.
It's just marijuana. It's not gold.
Exactly my point.
Harden your safe where you keep your money, and you're better off to harden your IT architecture. Are people going to break in and steal the weed? Maybe, but if I'm a bad guy and I got a chance to steal a bunch of TVs or a bunch of weed, I'll probably steal the TVs because they're worth more. The weed's easier to move. Obviously, you can sell that. But I think they're going a little too far on the whole security aspect.
Or if I could go to LCBO and grab a bunch of cases of vodka, I'd be in good shape, right?
Yeah. So, there's always a groundswell, and everybody's always super, super vigilant. But I think it'll even out over time. I think.
I think so too.
It's here to stay, and
I think so too. I'm gonna move on.
Okay, let's move on. When are we going to talk about cigars?
We're gonna at the end. Corporate investigations.
Yeah.
So listen, #MeToo.
That's a real moneymaker, man.
Olga here has given me some points on corporate investigations and it being a moneymaker. So the Boucher, she's in Windsor, so I don't know if it's a Boucher or Boucher. Walmart Canada. This is from 2012 off the top of my head.
It just settled though, didn't it?
I think it did recently.
Yeah.
Or sorry, it went to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
It was reduced. But the point is this: as an owner manager, I think you've got a bunch of competing interests here. Right? You want to look out for your employees.
Yes.
Right. That's, to me, that's job number one.
Yeah.
Right. But then you have one employee accusing another employee, so you want to be fair.
Yeah.
Right. You want to. My prejudice is always with maybe the weaker in that power structure, but you want to be fair. And then you got the brand, and then you got the social media, sort of the ability for this issue to explode. Yeah. Right. So what do you do to help out in those situations?
Well, the most important thing here is that you can't investigate it yourself. For God's sakes, don't give it to HR, right? Because don't give it to HR because they will cock it up. Right? You need professional.
My first instinct is I want to say in court later that I handed it off to a professional.
Exactly.
That's my first instinct.
You want an independent third party who's objective. And when I do these cases, and my colleagues do these cases, the first thing we say to the people, whether it's the guy who's being accused of doing the bad thing, or in most cases the lady who is accusing him of doing the bad thing, first thing I say to them is, I'm a truth seeker. That's all I am. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to know the truth. What happened? You tell me what happened, and then I have to gauge whether you're being truthful or not, or corroborate what you've said. Most of these cases are pretty straightforward. But there are occasions when people contrive their evidence. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens.
It's happening more and more.
But what
particularly
happens
in the U.S., not in Canada.
What happens is, I got to tell you my Harvey Weinstein story. This is a good thing. Anyway,
Tell me your Harvey Weinstein story.
so Mary and I were in the UK about 7 years ago. We went to this place for drinks with some friends of mine in the film industry, and she goes to the restroom, comes back, doesn't say anything, and then afterwards she said she went into the lobby and Harvey Weinstein was there, and I said, "Who's Harvey Weinstein?" I had no idea, but she reads all those magazines. Oh, he's a big movie producer, and he was with some girl, and he pointed at me and said, "Will she do?" And he said to her, "Come with me, I've got champagne up to my room." And she said, "Buzz off, buddy. No, But she didn't tell me because she figured I'd go and pop the guy, right? But I thought,
Which you would've.
Imagine though if she had. Imagine if she'd have come to me and done that,
Yeah.
and gone and punched him in the nose.
It would have saved a lot of.
Yeah, but now I'd be like, I'd be in the front of the movie magazine. But I was saying about sometimes people can try things. More often, we always say there's three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth.
Yeah.
And so people they don't so much make things up as they color their evidence. And so a professional
They
investigator...
believe.
Yeah, well,
What they believe,
There's
right?
memory hardening, and
Yeah.
we could talk for hours on this. You have to interview these people forensically. So, for example, you ask her to tell you about the thing that happened, and usually you can tell pretty quick when people are being honest. But then you ask them to tell you the whole sad story from the very beginning to the end, and then you back them up, and then you get them to tell it backwards. What happened before that?
Tell it backward.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. What happened before that? What happened before that? What did you have for breakfast that day? What were you wearing that day? What was he wearing that day? Just probative questions. There's more to investigating than that, and I'm touching it very lightly. But you're trying to build up a rapport with the person, and also if in the majority of these cases are true, and
Yes.
and so you're dealing in most cases with a female who's been really put in a bad situation, and a lot of times if it's the big boss who figures this isn't going to affect me, like interviewing those guys is the bigger challenge because
Right.
they bluster, but you can usually chop them down fairly quick once you tell them what the facts of life are. But what I do is when I go into a room to talk to someone, and I've had this happen before, either in a unionized environment or not. Sit down, the guy will say, the union guy will say, "Don't answer that question," or the guy himself will say to me, I refuse to answer. I don't want to be incriminated. I say, well, first of all, we're not in the United States. You can't plead the fifth. Secondly, I'm not the police. This is not a police investigation. You don't have any charter rights. I'm an agent of your employer. If I ask you a question and you refuse to answer it, you're being insubordinate to your employer. And there are ramifications to that. So stop being a dick and answer the question. Because I may be your best pal, you just don't see it. Here's your opportunity to say what really happened in your eyes. And then you have to sit back and then you have to sit with all the management of the company and say, look guys, here's what's going on.
Right.
These things are very sensitive, and you're dealing with emotions and reputations, and some of the people are badly damaged by this stuff.
That's
And
for sure.
My whole life as a police officer was trying to serve and protect the public, and the same public, these ladies who, some of them have been treated pretty roughly, and there is a certain amount of satisfaction.
There's a lot of creeps out there.
Oh yeah, tons.
Like, it shocks me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a certain amount of satisfaction in getting these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, especially when they think you're not going to get them.
Yeah.
That's I find that very
Okay.
very good.
I'm a business owner. One of my employees comes to me and says, "So, I was harassed. Here's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do?"
You contact the human resources people, but you control the
They're
situation.
the worst.
They are, but you got to deal with them because you have policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And what you need is a policy on how to deal with this. Because it depends. If the lady is reporting a guy who did something wrong to his boss and they're pals, that's often an issue because there's a lot of collegiality within the group. You have to have very, very strict policies and procedures. What do we do? So you contact HR. HR contacts an outside investigator. Now, there's a lot of lawyers that do this too, and some of them are very competent.
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends. These three female lawyers who are very good with this stuff, and they don't take any baloney, which is nice to see. But you need to bring in people from the outside.
Exactly, right.
Because everybody's got skin in the game, and you want somebody who's got,
Right.
who's at arm's length from the whole thing. You have to do that.
Right.
Because
And for my own, because I'm always about self-preservation, so I'm always thinking a year from now, I'm in court.
Mm-hmm.
What did I do?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I wash my hands. Like, I care about everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right answer is. No matter what I do, I'm going to be prejudiced. I'm going to be accused of being prejudiced.
That's right.
bring in the third party.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the right answer.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Okay. How does a mid-market, so we talked about cybersecurity, we talked about due diligence, we talked about investigations in these issues.
Yeah.
Let's talk about cost. Because I think, I'm gonna preempt you, and I'm gonna say, some of this is shockingly easy and cheap from a value perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You want to talk about that for a
Yeah.
second?
You know, due diligence assignments, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking, if it's somebody who lives in Canada, you're talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 top end.
Yeah.
If we have to get on a plane and fly to Switzerland and interview the guy's mom, well, okay, then it's going to cost you more. But
Right.
domestically, in North America, it's going to cost you anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to have that done.
But it doesn't have to be. We were at a client this morning that I introduced you to.
Yes.
We talked about 200 people.
Well,
You
that's
said,
criminal history check.
let's do a criminal history, which we weren't doing, but
Yeah.
I'm concerned that we got stuff going
Oh,
on.
yeah,
in
that's
New
like
York.
a...
And you're like $125.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's nothing.
Right.
If you just want to
But
check
I think
their
people
criminal
need to
record-
understand that because I don't think they do understand that.
No, fair enough, fair enough.
Right.
So a criminal record check, and what that will say is if the person's been convicted of an offense. Not if they've been
Yeah.
charged and released,
Right.
just if they've been convicted.
But somebody can come to you and can say, here's what I'm thinking. You've got an idea.
Mhm.
It's not as expensive as you think.
Oh, no, no,
The
no.
value for money
Yeah.
is really there.
And it depends on what you want. You know, if you just want to check criminal records, which for me is important if you have, you know, like 200 guys working in a factory or in a warehouse, yeah, you want to check their criminal records. You're not going to be doing, you know, an in-depth background check and seeing if they're on a terrorist watch
Right.
list. When you're doing someone who's in the financial industry, you're going to do a deal with, then you're talking about, you know, $3,000 or $5,000, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
If you're talking about somebody who's in Japan or in Iran or in Pakistan or one of those places, then the price of poker goes up.
Yeah.
And we have people on the ground in pretty well every country. And most of these people are guys that were either foreign liaison guys that we knew, cops or soldiers or spies that we knew, or guys that were from North America who went over there as liaison and married a local girl and just stayed. But we have people everywhere, and we're part of a lot of associations, organizations, so we can always find somebody to dig it out for you if you need the information.
How are we doing for time for you? We're after 5:02.
I'm okay.
You're okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
We're up. Want to talk about SNC Lavalin
Yeah.
and deferred prosecution, or would you rather talk about Mueller and obstruction of justice?
Oh boy. We can talk about either one of them. I guess Canadian one's probably the best one to talk about.
All right. So for the U.S. guys that don't know, people, SNC Lavalin, largest construction company by revenue in Canada. So you're thinking, so what? But 50,000 employees worldwide, 50 countries with offices, operations in 160 countries. What's the background on the scandal? Like I'm not 100% up to date on this, but bottom line is they were paying bribes in Libya.
Yeah.
Gaddafi's son. This is my favorite part. Gaddafi's son was in Canada, and they took him to Edmonton, and they spent $30,000 on prostitutes.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yeah. He has a
I've been
condo
to
here. He has a
Edmonton.
condo over here too.
Does he?
Yeah.
So, in the Canadian press, I actually got an email as I was waiting to go live here from the Conservative Party of Canada, which said nobody cares about the scandal because it doesn't involve sex and drugs, which I thought was exactly wrong because it specifically involves sex and drugs. But everybody's concerned about Trudeau and the interference and looking for deferred prosecution. But let's talk about, I'm interested first of all in the bribery issue.
Okay.
And you know, I've been to Egypt, for example, right? So I sat with a bunch of generals, we're looking at a project, and they want a bunch of money up front. And I just said no, and I left the country. That happens 100% of the time.
Yes.
What can you do and what shouldn't you do?
You can't pay a public official. You can't do that. You can't pay a government person to get a deal. The problem is this. If you and I are doing a deal in Canada, and let's say we want to sell boots to the army, And a third guy comes in the deal and he says, listen guys, this is great because my brother-in-law is the guy who makes the decisions at the Army on which boots to buy. We're going to go, oh Christ, no, this is not going to work. There's a conflict of interest, we can't do it, it's done, but we shouldn't be doing it. In places like Egypt or South Asia or Africa, that's a selling feature.
Exactly.
Everybody's got a friend who's a general.
Yes.
Everybody.
Because everybody is a general.
Exactly. In those countries, the whole idea of bakshish and bribes, it's ingrained in...
It's the way business is done. It's not even accepted. It's just part of the culture.
Yeah. And the problem is that corruption is the root of all evil in the world. And that's the issue. That's what subverts democracies, is corruption. We're seeing it all over the world right now. We're seeing it in Venezuela. We see it in Cuba. In all of those so-called democratic societies, which are in fact was Marxist regimes, dictatorships. But bribery is it a bribe or is it a facilitation payment? That's the other question. Okay, so
or is it legit? Because they don't say to you, I want a bribe.
It's a bribe.
I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
I'm saying they don't tell you that.
Well, no.
Right. So
you don't call it a bribe.
But if you're in the middle of that deal,
yeah.
Here's my point. My point is, I think if you're in the middle of that trade, if you're a junior mining company working in whatever crazy place,
yeah,
right, or if you're me in this instance Egypt, or if you're working in, I've been in Matrook right on the Libyan border,
yeah,
and working with the fellow there who's supposed to be the governor is supposed to be the next guy to replace CC.
Yeah.
They don't tell you,
no,
pay me and I'm going to do this. That's not the way it works.
No.
Right? You have to kind of look through it. And I think you ought to be able to call Chris and say, here's my set of facts.
And we do that all the time.
I need an independent judgment because honestly, I'm in the middle of this thing.
The
and
challenge,
it's hard to understand, right?
The challenge is that when they do call us, it's usually too late. Okay, but the big challenge is agents, right?
Companies use even worse.
Yeah, they use an agent in a foreign country,
right?
And they think that's a way that they can absolve themselves from sin, because I'm paying this agent,
right? So if I say to my agent in, I won't name the country,
yeah,
but if I say to him, I'm not paying a bunch of cash up front, but I'll pay you 10% on closing, and you deal with that.
Well, if he's
that hasn't absolved me of anything.
Well, no, and he probably wouldn't have the cash flow anyway to do it. But the point is that agents are that's where most of these companies get hit, because they're not watching what they're doing. They're paying tons of money to their foreign sub to pay local agents, and that's where the bribes are coming from. Now, nobody's showing up with a suitcase full of cash. It's being done, in a more quiet manner. And what that is the audit committee's responsibility to look at this and say, what are we doing over there? For example, if you're looking for fraud, and we go through invoices, if I send you a bill for $50,000, it's going to be several pages of what we did, many pages of the hours that we put in, and all of those things. You want to see frauds? Just look for the bills that say consulting, $250,000, consulting, $1 million. It sticks out. It's like a bright light. Yeah. That's what they're doing. They're paying their brother-in-law. He doesn't have enough ass in his pants to make a 10-page document. He just puts in a little bill and gets his money. Yeah. We see it constantly.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Talk about deferred prosecution.
Mm-hmm. A new thing.
And before you do,
yeah.
So SNC Lavalin. So they're accused of all of this bribery stuff.
Yeah.
And then, if you're not from Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who I'm no lover of, but he and his administration stepped in and tried to convince
the Attorney
General, I want to say Governor General, the Attorney General, tried to convince the Attorney General to not proceed with whatever criminal charges and go for deferred prosecution. And that's become a political scandal.
Yes.
And have I got that more or less right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm a Trudeau hater. I'm thinking to myself, that's his job.
No.
Like, I want him to do that.
No.
So let's start with the different. So deferred prosecution to me means there's fines and nothing else.
Deferred prosecution.
And what I want to know is what the opposite is.
Okay.
Like, what were they going to do with it? Were they going to put people in jail, or what was the deal?
Well, it's Canada. Nobody goes to jail. Deferred prosecutions they're very common in the United States, but then the United States does a lot. The U.S. Justice Department does a lot of civil actions.
Right.
They sue a lot of people and a lot of assets and that kind of thing. They actually sue an asset. If you, U.S. government versus a building.
Versus my car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Deferred prosecutions are set up so that, well, for that point, so that the company continue to do business if it's in the public interest for that company to continue to do business. Yet they still get sanctioned, and it doesn't tie up the courts, etc. But this is something that has to be done at arm's length from the government. It has to be done by people who do this for a living. They're the ones that look at the merits of the case. Just like the Supreme Court would look at something.
Yeah.
What has been done here is no different than the Prime Minister picking up the phone and calling the Supreme Court judge and saying, hey, give these guys a break. That's what they're doing. It's my opinion that this whole deferred prosecution program was created and inserted in the budget purely for the SNC Lavalin case.
Really?
I think so. Because it was at like page 256 of the budget. It just sort of slid in there and nobody really cared about it. So it's what they're saying is that the Prime Minister and the PM's office and some other people put pressure on.
If there was none of this going on,
Okay.
and it was just going after SNC, what would happen? Are there executives going to jail?
Some have already.
Is the company blowing up? Like, what happens?
Some of their people have done it.
Like, is it Arthur Anderson? Are they gone?
Yeah. Some of their people have gone to jail.
Okay.
There's a couple, I think, that have already been convicted in the McGill University Medical Center thing, I think. What SNC is saying is all those bad guys that we had are gone now. And that the heart and mind of the company has changed completely from that day. And that is possibly a valid rationale, okay? They can make representation to the Attorney General and say, look, we really cleaned up our act. You pinched a couple of our guys. We have strong rules. We're willing to pay a big fine. We're ready to go. But what the Attorney General has said is that what you guys did is so egregious that the people of the country won't be satisfied if we just make you pay a fine because you got a lot of money anyway. Somebody has to get whacked for this. The company has to be sanctioned for this.
Yeah.
The big issue here is that if they get convicted, they can't bid on any Canadian projects for the next 10 years. They're already not allowed to bid on anything overseas in the EU because of their corruption convictions.
So if I'm struggling as a non-law enforcement person to understand the difference between what would have happened versus what's going to happen in a deferred prosecution type scenario,
It's all about bids.
It's all about the bids.
Yeah, because if you don't get convicted, if it's deferred prosecution, you pay a fine, then you can bid on government projects.
I
But
get
if they,
it.
but if they whack you, 10 years. And so what they're saying is SNC would lose a lot of business and then a lot of jobs in a place like Quebec where they really vote for the Liberal Party would be, badly impacted by this.
Gotcha.
So that is the way I see it anyway. I'm no lawyer, but that's what it is.
All right. Let's wrap this up with a couple small points. Rapid fire.
Okay, go.
Slippery slope theory.
Okay.
My theory is that you hear about Ponzi schemes, Madoff, financial frauds. With the exception of Madoff, what percentage of all of these things were set up from day one to be a fraud? And what percentage were a slippery slope? One bad decision followed by another bad decision. Because my personal assumption is 95% or higher are slippery slopes. Just people making one bad decision after another.
I think you're on. I think I agree with you mostly. I think there's a continuum here from being good and being bad.
And you could start off good and end up bad.
Well, what happens is you start off doing the little thing.
Yeah.
It's like getting on that walkway at the airport. You know, you start off
The
here,
elevator.
yeah, a little small thing, but by the time you get down to the other end, then you're in big trouble.
Exactly.
So you play a little shell game because you got a bit of a problem, and you said we're going to do this, and then we'll make this problem go away, and we'll never do it again. But then the problem gets bigger.
Exactly.
But now you're already doing it, and
that's most of the time, right?
well, I think in many of the times, yeah. Sometimes it's a pure fraud, but a lot of these deals, like the Arthur Andersen Enron deal, I think they started with a nod and a wink, and then they just got out of
control.
Yeah, and they were making so much money,
Yeah.
and that's the thing when you're making
As
that
opposed to
much money-
Madoff, who just sort of woke up and said, "I'm never going to trade anything."
Yeah, but I'll tell you an interesting story about Madoff. Prior to this going down, Société Générale in France, they sent 3 or 4 of their kids over. They were holding about, I don't know, it was like 200 million in notes that were collateralized by Madoff Holdings. And they had an opportunity to get into a much larger position. So they sent some of their young kids over to New York to do their due diligence. These kids came back and said to the management of SocGen, there's something funny here, because when the market's down, these guys go up, and when the market's up, these guys go up. It doesn't fit any model that we've ever seen. We think it's high risk. And SocGen said, okay, we're not doing it. And they didn't get hardly hit at all by the Madoff thing, except Jerome Kerviel, one of their traders, ripped them for like $8 billion on another deal later,
Yeah.
so they still got whacked.
Yeah.
But that was the thing with Madoff, and he played it well because people would try and get in, and he'd say no.
No.
And he ripped off the Yeshiva University in Florida, and he ripped off some heavy people. And a lot of people, they see fraud as like
That goes back to our psychology of fraud.
well, a non-violent crime. There was one gentleman who killed himself in his office because he lost all his clients' money.
Yeah.
He put 2 garbage cans beside his chair, slit both his wrists, didn't want to make the floor dirty for the cleaners, and he killed himself. People lost fortunes. People lost everything because of that guy.
All right. Money laundering.
Yeah.
We talked before we started going live here
Mm-hmm.
about these families that have paid tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get their kid into UCLA
Yeah.
or into Yale, and I've been confused by the money laundering charges that have gone along with that. Because to me, money laundering is I committed a crime, I got a bunch of money, now I need to launder that and sort of get that legit in some way,
Mm-hmm.
which is not what they're doing. They're paying money, they're not receiving money.
Mhm.
What am I missing there?
What's happening is that in order to have money laundering, you need to have a predicate offense.
No.
There's no money laundering without a crime. There has to be a crime behind the money, or it's not illegal. In the case of the university, well, also in the United States, money laundering is like a charge that's added on almost all the time. But in the case of this university,
Legit? Added on
oh
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time?
In this case, there was bribery, secret commissions, and fraud, uttering false documents. Those are all predicate offenses. So anytime money flows from the commission of those offenses, and that money is taken by someone and put into a bank and as it's a charity, it's a charitable donation.
Right.
That wasn't a charitable donation, so what you've done is obfuscated the source of the funds.
What if I didn't know that?
Well, if you've been indicted, you're going to have to show that you didn't know it. But
It feels like a stupid question because obviously I did know that.
well, it's about mens rea, right? Guilty
Yeah.
mind. It's about your intent.
Right.
And what you can do is prove the intent. Plus, as it is in every case in the United States, because the prison terms are so significant, someone always flips
Yes.
and then testifies against everyone else. When I was an RCP officer, we did a lot of international cases, and when our guys would grab some guy, they'd say, if you don't flip and be an informant for us, we're not going to charge you. That's what do you mean? We're going to call the Americans and say, here, take them. Because when you go down there, you're going to do 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, up here, you'll do nothing.
You're
But down there, you're done. And we got lots of great informants because they didn't want to go across the border to Gladiator camp down there. And yeah, that's the way it works.
So the point of the money laundering is if you're spending money in furtherance of a crime, that is also money laundering.
Yeah, you're conspiring.
Is that right?
Yeah, you're part of a
Which I
conspiracy.
didn't know before.
Yeah.
All right.
If you pay money to make something happen, and it's a bad thing that you make happen, there's still a money laundering aspect
Yeah.
to that.
Which is not what I thought. Okay. Tell me about your charity on your website. Is that still going on?
Yeah. And they got big kids.
I want to know the first question I have is, so they're super cute.
Yeah.
Have you brought 3 back in your suitcase? Like, what have you done there?
No, I haven't brought any of them back. You know, the problem is that up in the hills there in Panama. My guy in Panama, we have a rep office in Panama, Bobby down there, very religious guy, and you know, part of his church thing. I mean, I have no religion, but he has enough for me and him. Part of his church thing is to help these little kids out. Let's be honest, their parents are a bunch of layabouts who do nothing. They just lay around and hang around and do nothing. There's no industry, there's no jobs. But these are little kids. So I don't get a tax deduction or anything.
1 month to 10 years old, it says, right?
Yeah. So what we do is, it's pretty simple. I give them a bunch of cash and I buy them Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
We buy chickens locally. We get rice locally and vegetables, and each.
Have you had an opportunity to interact?
I was in Panama like a month ago, but I couldn't get up there because we had other things going on. But I'll go back and see them. But they always send me a video. You know, they send me a video when they have it. So each of them gets dinner, and they get a toy, and they get either a shirt or a dress for the little kids. And you know what? It's just do something. They're just little kids. You know, and so Bobby puts the touch on me. But then I said to him, "Look, I could fill a container up here in Toronto and put the arm on all my friends." And
why didn't you get all Pocock's toys?
Well, here's the problem.
Pocock, you heard about this, right?
Yeah, he had all those toys.
Even from Toys R Us, he had containers loaded
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah, but the problem is this: you don't want to bombard them with too much, first of all.
Okay.
But what I said to Bobby is, I can fill a container with stuff and bring it down there, and he said, no, it's too much for them. We use the money and we distribute the money locally. You know, we try and buy things from the local community, and we try and keep that money in the community. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does, and I don't want to turn it into something huge. It's just something I do, and I like little kids, like who doesn't? And mine are all grown up, so now I got a bunch of other little ones. You know?
How do people see this charity? I got it through your website.
Yeah, on our website. Yeah, I mean, I'm not soliciting funds for it.
I'm not saying you're soliciting. I just thought it was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
So go on Chris Mathers Inc.
ChrisMathers.com.
ChrisMathers.com and check this out because that was pretty cute.
Yeah, they're just little kids, you know.
All right. Lastly,
cigars.
We've been way too long. These were brought to me straight from
Nicaragua.
Yeah. Tell me. So I'm so excited. I am a brand new member of a cigar club in New York.
Yes, it's very impressive. And we're going to be going there on the 10th of May.
On 10th of May, we'll be there. I've been on a 3-year waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
Notwithstanding all these Italian fellows that told me I'd be in right away.
Yeah.
But it still took 3 years.
You didn't have to pay any bribes, did you?
No. Didn't pay a thing. I'm in. I need cigars.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about these.
These cigars are blended by Don Fidel Oliva in Esteli, Nicaragua. And Don Fidel is a friend of mine and probably one of the primo cigar blenders in the world. He's a great guy. They're named after another friend named Abel Exposito, who was the boss at Partagas in Havana, and who now runs a restaurant in Havana. He was a friend of ours, and we asked Abel if we use his name. He said, sure, why not? He's a well-known guy in the cigar industry. And so we went down to Nicaragua, and it was quite a lot of fun because we did a tasting. And I thought, this is baloney, but it was very cool. We had, I think it was 6 people. We had 8 different blends of cigar, and we had to smoke them. And smoke 8 cigars at the same time.
That's harsh.
It is, but you don't smoke the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you have to make notes like you would at a wine tasting. And as it turned out, of the 6 people, 5 of them picked one blend, and then the 6th person picked another, but picked our blend as the second choice. So that's the blend that we have, and we've come out so far in 4 brands or 4 sizes, and we're not distributing in Canada because of the onerous, tax, and in Canada they're talking about taking the bans off the cigars now.
Really?
Oh yeah, like no names, and that just kills it. But we distribute them in the United States and in Europe. And for me, I got a little piece of it. It's not going to be a moneymaker. It's fun, and I like cigars.
Well, my fellow New York Rafi has demanded boxes of cigars, so we need to sort this out.
Yeah, well, we'll sort that out for sure.
All right.
We'll get them to him easily.
Good. Anything else?
I think we're good.
We're good. ChrisMathers.com. Are people still buying this book?
Yeah,
How
electronically, I guess they are. I've sort of gone past that now.
You're past that? Doesn't matter?
Yeah,
It's a great book.
It's available. I think you can get it for on eBay for 75 cents.
All right, let's cut it off.